right, we are live. This is episode 28 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction company. How we doing, fellas?
What's
Feeling a
going
little,
on?
feeling under the weather a bit, but I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Okay, you got to man up in
That's it.
situations like these, right?
That's right.
Let's kick it off with a quick review. This is from our boy Zach from Ohio. Jobtable transformed my business. My income nearly doubled thanks to its efficiency. Lifetime customer for sure. Great hands-on training and top-notch real person support. Shout out to Zach. That's
Nice
Shout
review.
out,
Thank you,
Zach.
Zach.
great review.
Thank you.
And yeah, and that's something like I get asked all the time about, our support. Like, do you guys do support? Because I guess, I get a lot of feedback from companies who are not used to getting support. Like, it's all like online, and that's something I say all the time. That is truly our bread and butter. We take support very seriously. We are, available for whatever help is required. So, yeah, thanks again
Absolutely.
to Zach. All right, so. We had an event on the weekend. It was the Construction Life podcast. It was a live event. They were celebrating Manny. He was celebrating 750th episode of his podcast, and I thought that was such a cool event, just to bring so many contractors and like ambitious contractors, I would say, who are like minded and ready to learn and grow. And it was just like a really cool event, connect with a lot of people that we know, some clients, new clients. So what did you guys think? What takeaways did you guys get from that, and how's the experience? Johnny, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, it was. I was. I think all of us, when we first walked in, just to see the overwhelming support um, and community that Manny has built. We've been on his podcast a few times, and we become friends of Manny's, and a lot of you know prior guests that he's had on the show. We know some of them from before. Some of them are clients. Some of them are new clients. Some of them, obviously, now also potential clients. And it was just great just to see what he's built, and walk into a space like that, and like you said, Costa, a lot of like-minded people. And I just felt that it was all genuine support, right? And as much as construction, we talk about it all the time, how it could be very cutthroat, very tough business with thick skin to be in. It, it just felt like, I guess the word I'm looking for is like, heartwarming. Like, it was very nice to see everybody coming together, having laughs, everybody mingling with each other. I was even talking to Manny last night, and I told him too. I was very proud of him on what he's accomplished, and the community that he's built around him, and how we're able to connect with a lot of people on our own as well, and they're able to connect with us, and you build kind of like lifelong relationships. So if there's anything I do want to say is big congratulations to Manny and to the Construction Life podcast, and just what an amazing event that he threw.
Yeah, for me, I was more impressed than anything. I mean, to gather that many people in a space for an event like that, and have all of these people show up and show you support. It really speaks a lot to Manny's character, and what he's accomplished. And if anybody hasn't listened to his podcast, be sure to do so, because you're definitely missing out. Another thing too that was a big eye opener is as much as I think the construction industry are old dogs that have a hard time learning new tricks, I found that it was actually quite the opposite. These guys that actually, like Costa, like you said, that want to actually like improve, they want to learn and are willing to make changes in order to better their business. They are out there. It's just sometimes it takes things like a podcast to gather them together, to rally them, right? So, but kudos to you, Manny. Bang up job, man. We're all proud of you.
That's what I got out of it too, Charlie. You kind of took the words out of my mouth. I think you know when we, if you think going back to when we got started with Jobtable, one of the stigmas we always had about like people in construction, it's like dinosaurs and like can't teach old dogs new trick and like they're all very old school. But this was just like a good reminder and um, a good reminder that I feel like that is a really false stigma. Like there's so many construction companies nowadays and owners of companies who like really understand that there's more to the business of construction than just like being on the tools and doing the job. Like that's half of it, but like there's a whole another half of like the business, the efficiency, how to be more productive, how to grow and learn, and like that's it's nice to see that. And a lot of these guys, just being more open to using technology and software like a Jobtable or anything else. So it was nice to see that. It's just nice to be around people like that who are like-minded in the sense like have a growth mindset or eager to learn and try new things. So that's what I took away from it, which was really nice
You know,
to be part of.
you know what? After you said that, it's kind of made me think. I don't think necessarily the stigma is wrong. I think that you're just seeing a lot of these old school guys are starting to retire and kind of get phased out, or their kids are taking over the companies. So you have these kids that grew up with iPhones and like kind of like in this new world who we're not used to seeing, and now these guys are starting their own companies after doing an apprenticeship, whatever the case may be. So times are changing, and there's hope out there for the construction world for sure.
Also feel too that they're an event like that it almost like brings people together because I remember you had guys like Aquastop, which are young entrepreneurs, right? But they're sitting in the same building and having this a conversation with the person who started Brafasco, right? I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a part of the panel when they did the live show. And it's crazy because you have two different perspectives. You have the old school, and then you have the young generation perspective. But it's good to get in a room, and it kind of, I find that's where people really drop their guard. And again, like you said, Charlie, I don't think it's a wrong stigma. It's just when you're in that environment, and you're constantly surrounded by that old school mentality, you're just a product of your environment. But now when you're in a room where you have the old school, you have the new school, you have the in between, and now it's just about collaborating and obviously discussing how to grow and scale a business. It's obviously different from when the Brofasco guys started, right? Compared to like when the new guys started, right? It's a totally different generation. It's a different world on how to get your name out there, what it means to do good work, what it means to follow up. So obviously you got to take a little bit from the old school, but the old school also has to learn from the new school. And again, creating an environment like that, I just found was so beneficial to everybody. And I think that's why I was really blown away just by the environment that was there because, you had guys who were very active on social media to big players in the game from the old school that there is no social media from them, right? But they're both known in different aspects, right? One from the old school, one from the new school. So it was really fascinating and honestly really empowering. I want to say to just look around and just say we all are striving for the same thing. And I think when you collaborate like that, and how Manny has brought such a big group together from all walks of life into one room, it's nice to see, right? It's nice to see that not everybody's just keeping to themselves and doing whatever they got to do and just staying in their lane. I like to see how we're all trying to help everybody grow. And I think that's the most important. Like a lot of people, they take Jobtable and what we do as, oh, we're just trying to sell software. And truly that's not even our story. Our story was to help us and then, how it evolved. And the reality is a platform like ours is not just to go out and sell software. It's about saving people time. It's about giving the power to the people that are running their business to put time back in their hands and to allow them to run their business um, um, successfully and obviously, more efficiently. And when you're in a room like that and you talk to people and you start describing the product and you show them the product, and then there's a guy there that's using the product that can vouch for it, people drop their guard and they're like, oh shit, so you guys are not just salesmen. And it's like, no, man, I'm a tradesman just like you. I felt that I felt that was very like warming, right? Everybody was very inviting. Everybody was, very talkative, very open, and again, nothing but to give kudos to Manny and the TCL podcast and everything that they've accomplished.
You know, it's funny you say that because as a guy who's been a plumber for 20 plus years, that's actually one of the things that was the most like special to me is seeing the old school guys kind of mentoring the young guys. Because I know when we were starting out 20 years ago, our old boss would have never sat down with us and gave us pointers on how to run a company. If anything, it was the opposite. It was very secretive, tight-lipped. And what you're seeing now, in the software space and now kind of like going into the construction is like social media, and it gives you the opportunity for these communities to kind of naturally grow, right? And it's pretty incredible, man.
Even like one speaking of social media, being in like we're used to just being on social media a lot, and like that's where we consume a lot of content and information and stuff. And like obviously we have a social media presence and all that. But then when you go into like a live event like that, it was a good reminder of how powerful social media is. Like, what do I mean by that? Is like Aquastop, for example. You mentioned like the guys at Aquastop, Antonio and the crew there. Shout out to Antonio. Like, it felt like I knew him already because of social media, and like
Yeah.
kudos to them because they have that. Just like shows how good of a presence they have and how active they are. And it's to the point where like if I ever need like waterproofing, like they're like the first ones that come to mind. Like I would call Antonio for waterproofing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like that's just a really good reminder of how powerful and effective social media is too.
And also too, all egos checked at the door, right? Again, like 20 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that, right? Like young guys just willing to, there's no cockiness, there's no ego, just walking in there and just literally just picking brains. And the old school guys just absolutely willing to give up any information, right? It's great. Like I know when me and Johnny were starting out, we didn't have those opportunities, and we kind of had to figure out how to price and how to scale drawings and how to do everything on our own through trial and error, and and honestly, I encourage it. I hope we see a lot more of these events, and I hope that we can organize one ourselves one day.
For sure. So speaking on like, because I come from you guys obviously you guys come from construction. I come from another business background, software and stuff. And from my experience, people successful like entrepreneurs and like people in business, I find are very open to like sharing, meeting with you, like giving insights, like even if like you don't know them. And that's something like I was surprised with early on, of how like actually how open people are to sharing experiences and like giving back. So like, do you think in construction it's just like an industry thing? It's just like the nature of people where like they're more closed off and guarded. Like, what do you think that is?
I think it just speaks to the type of industry construction is. Like I always call it the last cowboy industry, right? And with that comes a lot of secrecy, pride. But again, that's because it's all these old school guys that are now kind of disappearing, and this is why you're seeing such a big change with these young guys coming in, because they're embracing the social media, and they're also understanding that if they don't keep up with it, they're going to fall behind because everybody's jumping on that train, right? Kind of like AI, right, so to speak. It's the same thing.
Like, what kind of secrets can you possibly like? I have a bit of a different view. Like when I was first starting out in business, I kind of had that mentality too. Where like, oh, you can't like say too much. You gotta keep things like closed off. But like what I found over the many years is like very, very rare. It's never happened to me where like you share some sort of insight or what you're doing and like someone copies you and like takes your business. Like I just find people in general, they're so busy and caught up with their own shit. Like they're trying to figure out like their own business and like what they're doing. For them to now take what you say and like actually execute it and put it into action, like it doesn't happen.
Well,
It really doesn't happen.
one example of like going back in the past where there might have been like six major contractors that were able to take like an electrical contract in the city, right? For high rise buildings going up in the 70s or 80s, right? So the competition was very stiff. So everybody's going to keep their cards very close to their chest if they have any inside information on, you know, the buildings that are coming out. If you have a contact in the city, whatever it is. Like I said, it's the last cowboy industry. So there's a lot of shady stuff that happens in construction in comparison to selling software, for example, right? So I think that's one of the cases where, you know, like we always say in software, we have a ton of competitors, but it's such a huge pie. There's enough to go around for everybody, right? And I think that you're kind of seeing that too now, kind of going into the construction zone where you have countless plumbing companies, and we can all eat, right? There's food for everybody to eat, as where that wasn't the case 30 years ago, right? Again, going back to these old school guys.
I just wanted to add to that, but I do agree to some extent, Charlie. But I also think there's a big like shift happening again, and I think it's, like we saw with the 750th show on Sunday, where you have now these spots, or these groups, let's just say, where people want to collaborate, right? In software, one thing I've noticed the second we got into this space, and obviously Costa, you've been into this space a lot longer than us, and maybe that's why you see it a little bit differently. But there's not many events that people throw like that where they want a bunch of electrical contractors and plumbing contractors and all different types of contractors to come in and talk and have a laugh. And I've never really noticed that. Mainly you'll have that if you have a client that has some type of event and you're going, and it's guys that you work with on site all the time, from different companies. But just to put everybody in a room like that, like I remember, like we met the owners of Rebel, Reno Rabbit, Aquastop. But then you also had, your comedians, like Stevie Just for Laughs, and you had, Brian Kudo. It was just a great mixture of people, from software to industry guys, and everybody's just there to learn. And I think it's because the younger generation, I feel, and also I want to say too, maybe some of the older generation, where it's been a little bit of a stiff industry, let's call it, where people are just trying to open up now, right? And trying to make people really understand that it's like, we're here to try to empower everybody. We're here to see everybody grow. We want everybody to be successful. If you're struggling with something, let's create a community where we can talk about it, right? Because we really want to fix the problems in the industry, so that moving forward, um, there's more of a collaborative effort, right? Like we should work together, not against each other. And I've noticed that in construction a lot, where everybody keeps their cards very close to their chest. But walking into an environment like that, like I said, that Manny, personally, I feel has had a hand in creating. It, it's very, inspiring, right? Because we don't need to be like that, right? Like I said, we were able to talk to all different companies, different software companies that were there. I know one of the software companies came up to us and was asking us for feedback, and the three of us, I remember, were just like welcomed him with open arms, and kept telling him, keep grinding, man. You're gonna get there. If you need any advice, please reach out to us. And again, I think it's becoming a community now where we've all come up through it. We've seen kind of, like I like to call it a stiff environment, where now everybody's kind of dropping their guard and understanding that it's like, look, I, I, we don't need to compete. Like like you said, Charlie, the pie's big enough. We can all eat, right? If I can help you in any way, I'm more than happy to give you advice or guide you in the right direction, or introduce you to people that might help, you on your journey, and vice versa if we need the help, right? So again, just meeting all these people, and like you said, Costa, I felt like when I walked in there and all these faces were walking by me and we're shaking hands, people knew us right away that we've never really met, but I felt like I've known them forever as well. It was really, really, just something to see, right? And again, I keep reiterating it. Um, just what an amazing, event that he put together, and all the people there, man. Just amazing guys and girls, an amazing group of people, and I hope we have a lot more of those.
Yeah. Something that I just coming back to the point you just made about like secrets and people being guarded. I think those days are honestly done. Like with throwing in out just technology, AI, the amount of information, any information you need to acquire, like it's readily available. Like unless it's some sort of like IP, trademark, secret, whatever, that's something else. But like in other than that, like anything you need, any information you need to access is very readily available. So the way I see it is like, why guard that? I think there's a lot of advantages to actually putting your stuff out there, like contributing, like that makes you become like an authority figure in your industry, where kind of people now look up to you because of the amount of information you're putting out there. So it's almost like it's a good marketing strategy. It's good for your own branding. It's good for credibility, authority. So
But I
yeah,
also
I think.
feel I also feel like getting together in an environment like that, some people also just need a little bit of encouragement, right? We talked to some people there, running, whether it was a carpentry business, whether it was a software business, whether it was a roofing company, and they were explaining to I was having some conversations where they were struggling a little bit, or they were having trouble expanding, or and they would come and we're having an open conversation. And I remember just a few of the guys. Again, I'm not going to name any of them, but just words of encouragement. Like keep grinding, man. It's tough, but just keep persisting at it. Do good work. Be a man in your word. Stuff that we always say on this podcast. And by the time you're done that conversation with that one individual, they're giving you a hug. They're like, man, thank you very much. We watch your content. Or we look up to you guys, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes coming together in a community like that gives people a little bit of a boost of encouragement, right? And I feel like, again, sometimes creating communities like this is what we need, right? Because we all go through tough times. Businesses, I always remember this chart, what people think success looks like in a business, and it's just like an arrow just going up like this. And then what success really looks like, and it's just squiggly lines everywhere. So sometimes creating that sense of community where it's like, look, man, we've been through it. Wherever we can help coach you guys through, let's talk through the problems. Let's talk through, why is the industry going this way? What can we do to fix it? I think it's very important, man, because again, no matter what governments come into play, no matter what the economy is doing, the only way to really fix or talk about what's happening is to have that community in the same industry, and just help each other through it, right? So
Yeah. Speaking of hard times, I know, this is something we keep talking about, and rightfully so, because of just the economy. Things are changing almost week by week. For example, here in Canada, we're just fresh off a new election. We have a prime minister now, Carney. So curious to hear from you guys on just, I know it's still like very fresh, but like has anything changed, like sentiment changed? People are like that, a bit of uncertainty is now like leveled off. It's like, okay, we have this new prime minister. Are things settled? Like what kind of conversations are you guys having on the ground?
I mean, you guys know how I feel. I really don't care who's in power. I've made that clear before, and I think it's the best way to live. I think if you're constantly worried about who's going to get voted in, and that for some that has some impact on your life, there's a problem. I think you have to plan for the worst case scenario, whether it's Polyev or Carney that comes into power, and you have to be prepared for it, right? What do I care who gets voted in? Now, the things that will matter are prices going up, right? Like tariffs, you have to be ahead of those things, right? You have to keep an eye on what the prices are for raw materials, whatever industry you're in. You have to keep your ear to the ground. Also, obviously, if taxes are going to be going up, but things that are out of your control are out of your control,
I
right?
totally agree with that, and I think we're all on the same page. But with that being said, the reality is like the sentiment of people, it changes. And for example, I spoke to one person at that event, and we were talking about how his business is going, and he said that he wants to make some hires in his business, but he put it on hold to see like who wins the election. And now that the Liberals won, he's actually not hiring anymore. But the point is, it's just like sentiment that people have is really like impacting the economy, and like in
Look,
this case, like it's actually directly impacting like a hiring
I
decision.
think that's the wrong mindset to have. I mean, I can't see any situation that you could tell me right now which would stop me from. The only thing that would stop me from hiring somebody else is if I don't have the work coming in, and I
well,
don't see how that would impact it. If you're a resourceful person, it doesn't matter who gets elected into power. What does that what does that have to do with anything?
that has a lot. So this is where me and Charlie are business partners, obviously, and this is where we have these discussions all the time where I fully agree where it's like no matter who comes in power, you got to be in control as much as you can. But the reality is, in the industries that we function in, government has a lot to do with it, and that has to do with the uncertainties in the market, which then impact people spending or not spending. Companies, doing rentals, not doing rentals. That matters on how many projects are out there. And
Okay,
the
well,
reality,
hold on. Sorry to cut you off, but how long have we been under a liberal control?
um,
With arguably the worst prime minister we've ever had in the history of Canada.
okay, so
How
let's look
long?
at, yeah, so
So
let's
that
unpack.
did that deter us from growing our company? Did you ever once think, "Oh, Trudeau's in power. I can't hire any more people," or did it motivate you to stay ahead of that dummy and
It,
grind and
yeah.
and make the right moves in order to continue to grow, regardless of who's in power?
Okay, so a couple of questions to answer there. So number one, they've been in power for 9 years. Okay, the beginning of his 9 year regime, let's call it, uh, the guy just spent like a rich kid spending his trust fund. Right now, the reality is at the end of his regime, when the money was running out, we spoke about this before last year. The first 6 months was our worst, running like our worst look at business since we started the company. And what happened was, leading up until this year, when the election was almost up and nobody knew whether he was going to step down or not. It created a lot of uncertainty in the market, which then created a lot of people not spending money, rates going up. So, as much as you want to sit there and say that the government, yes, I agree, you need to prepare for the worst and not be too focused on who gets in and who gets out. But the reality is, in our country, and in the United States, government has a lot to do with the you know the impacts that it has on the economy. And again, for Canada, construction being the driving factor, if you have a prime minister or a president that's causing uncertainties in the market and inflation, right? It's going to really impact the projects that are out there. And what happens is that all the companies now are going to be fighting for those projects, which makes an even harder market, which makes it harder to make money, right? So again, as much as like you said, I don't worry too much about who's coming into power and who's not. What I worry more on is what that party wants to implement into our country and what that's going to do to the markets and to the certainty of people spending money. We see it in houses, right? The housing market has a big decline. The rental market has a big decline. High-rise building, people are shelving these projects, right? This doesn't have to do with people just saying, "Oh, I'm going to shelf this project because I just don't want to do it right now." No, it has to do with what the government has implemented, how
And I'm
the
not
rates
arguing
have
that.
gone up. Yeah.
Just to be clear, yeah, I'm not arguing the fact that if a conservative government came in, there wouldn't be more opportunities for
So
builders
yeah,
and contractors.
yeah.
I couldn't agree more actually. But what I'm saying is, by saying that, you're relying, right? The question kind of leans towards relying on a conservative government to come in so those opportunities can be created for you. As where what I'm saying is, if you have the mindset that it's irrelevant who comes in and you create your own opportunities, if the conservative government does get voted in, that's just a cherry on top. That's a bonus, but you shouldn't be relying on that. You should make your own path.
No, you have to make your own path. But getting back to what Costa was saying with the gentleman he was talking to at the event, the reality is that guy probably wanted to make a hire because he saw, he has room for an employee or two, but depending on what government comes in, uh, is going to impact how many jobs are out there. So he probably did not make a hire, number one, because of, like Cost said, maybe like a tax implication, or number two, just because when this government comes in, maybe it does not add that stability to the market, which means that he's unsure whether, if he hires this guy now, especially being a new hire, and if he's a newer company, you don't want to, hire somebody and then have to let him go 3 months later, because that will impact you as well as a business owner when you're trying to grow, and the first employee you hire, you can't even keep them for 3 months, right?
Yeah,
So
no, I get that, and again, I don't know the details of his situation, right? And if he wants to hit us up and let us know, and I'm putting my foot in my mouth right now, then by all means, I'd love to hear from him. But I can't see a world, like I don't live in a world where somebody gets voted in, and based on my opinion of this government, of what I think may happen, it's going to deter me from hiring somebody. I don't understand that.
Let me try and using that example, right? And look, I think we're all in a line. Like, you shouldn't care who's in power, whatever the case is. But again, the reality is, like, people's confidence, the sentiment out there, like, really impacts like how people spend, like, their decisions. So like, if I were to steal man, again, I don't know the details. Maybe we can like get him on, sure. But if I were to like just think about it and like just steel man like his position, right? Like, now that a liberal government um, is in place, like there's uncertainty, like who's going to come in power. So now that they're in place, like if I'm maybe if I'm him, I'm just putting myself in his shoes. One, let's say like liberal governments, they're generally more inclined to have like more like regulatory burden, right? Like more labor regulations, environmental standards, compliance. So like changes in that, like maybe now people are more cautious to expand headcount because of these regulatory burdens that liberal governments tend to provide. Uh, Taxation, right? Like in general, liberal governments, like they increase a lot of like the corporate personal tax rates, like capital gains, like payroll taxes. So maybe that like is in someone's mind, and because of that, now they're hesitant as well. So that those are like the two things I can kind of think of. Whether that's right or wrong, and I'm just trying to like steel man another like point of view, but like comes back down to just confidence that people have in an economy, which really impacts spending. Like, that's just
yeah,
what it is.
and look, as much as we don't want to believe it, the reality is, just look at the stock markets, right? I agree that you cannot live your life based on who's in power and who's not. But in business, the reality is you need to watch who's in power. And again, you go back to the stock markets. Stock markets, if there's a government that's in power and there's not a lot of confidence and high regulatory, factors being put into play, high taxes, high this, high that, makes people not want to spend, which then in turn make the market go down. Now, if you got somebody in power that gives confidence to the market roars, people spend money, people will take loans, people will do this, do that. So, and again, then that transfers into the construction business, right? Does this big company, are they going to expand? Are they going to build this, 500,000 square foot, 1 million square foot plant? Well, it depends. What's the tax incentives, right? I remember here in Toronto, right, there was a huge bid for Amazon to come here, right? It was between us and a couple of big states in the United States. And again, we lost it. Why? Right? Because that company had more confidence and there was more incentives to build I believe it, what was it, New York, Costa, that they ended up putting
I,
um,
I
the
I don't know if it
headquarters.
was New York.
Yeah,
I can
it
look it
was
up.
one of them. But again, it had to do with tax incentives. So as much as we don't want to believe, or not believe, but as much as we don't want to live our lives based on who's coming in power and who's not coming in power, the reality is that unfortunately, that's what's going to dictate also too, right? How like are people going to spend money or are they not going to spend money? Because
Actually, it's
even
coming back. So in this particular case, I'm remembering now, it was along the lines of he was looking to get into like production of like a certain like product, and he was thinking how, now that it's liberals, there's more like there's more like regulation around like green energy and like things like that, where it kind of like made him pause some of that like
Yeah.
production.
Okay. But what would happen? What would happen if a conservative government came in, right? So he felt more comfortable. He did it, and then the liberal government came in and completely like squashed his dreams.
But
He
that's
should
the
be
whole point.
prepared. But
That's the
that's
whole
what I mean.
point.
You should be prepared regardless. Like I mean, where there's a will, there's a way. When taxes are getting to a point where they're outrageous, right, and unjustifiable, we know that we're probably not going to be living in this country forever. You're going to start to plan, right? You're going to start to think of the future and what you can do to avoid these things naturally.
yeah, but you're talking on a personal sense now, right?
Both
That's
for
different.
for
No,
anything, John.
that's
For anything, John. Look, like we're
well,
hiring.
let me
We're always
ask you
hiring
this.
for Jobtable. We're always hiring for iPlum. Does the government that's in right now? Did that ever cross your mind once?
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Uh, so
And I get
so
what you guys are saying. I'm not.
I'm just
I agree with
I'm
a lot that you guys are saying, but at
I'm
the end of the
steel
day,
I'm
it's in
steel
your
manning
hands.
this as well. Okay. So let me put something in front of you, Charlie. So, like you said, it's not going to stop us from hiring from Jobtable. Well, Jobtable, we work remotely. You know what I mean? So reality is we hire all over the world, right? But now when it comes to iPlum, okay? So if we notice that a government's come in and the regulations are through the roof, the tax are through the roof, and like you and just using your argument, it's like, well, you need to prepare. You might not be living in this country forever. So if you're not, and you notice that it's getting out of control, that you don't, it no longer makes sense to run a business here, are you going to go and hire more people? No, that's what gives the uncertainty in the market. So again, getting back to, unfortunately, the reality is if you're running your business in Canada or in the United States or anywhere for that matter, and you are in business and you're looking to expand, who's coming into government, the certainties that it gives into the market is relevant, right? And it's relevant on, am I going to expand, right? Like we talked about this last year. We hit a threshold with iPlum at the end of the year. We had the government knocking on our door saying, hey, by the way, you guys did really good this year. You guys have now hit this new threshold. This new tax kicks in. And now you guys owe us X amount of money. And I remember me and you looked at each other and we were like, what the fuck? You go from, point A to point B, you employ that much more people. And instead of like
And
having
yet
a
we've continued
reward,
we've continued to grow, and yet we've continued to hire.
uh, I understand that, but
This
that's
is my
because
point.
but that's because we've been blessed, right? And we've worked hard, right?
But why
To
are we
be in this
blessed?
position.
Why are we blessed? Are we blessed because of a conservative government? Like, look, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. At the end of the day, who gives a shit who's in power? Don't let it deter you. If you have a mission, complete your mission. That's
Yeah,
it.
complete your
Don't
mission.
let anybody fucking stop you. That's all.
Yeah. So no, that's no, that was just interesting. So you guys recently hired as well in iPlum, a few new guys. So I know we talked about hiring. How did you notice any like shift in like just the amount of applicants, the quality of applicants? Like, what are you seeing? I know we spoke about you're seeing a lot of like union guys coming in. Like, has anything changed with this last hiring round?
You know what? Honestly, the last batch was great. We actually had a really good batch of applicants come in, and I don't think anything necessarily changed. I think, you just get lucky sometimes. We typically get, 20, 30 applicants every round, and after sifting through them, you're lucky if you can hire two, and one of them ends up staying for the long haul. But we actually had some pretty good quality. There are a lot of union guys that are coming in. A lot of them are sitting at home, not working. But again, it's just, union guys are just a different animal, different kind of workers.
What's the most important thing you look for when hiring?
We've touched on this before. For me, it's work ethic. I think work ethic takes the cake over anything. Obviously, if I'm hiring someone that I need to have a bit more experience, like a fourth year or fifth year or a licensed guy, then obviously then I have to question, what they've done, their skill level. And we've talked about this too. I take them at their word, right? You really can't hide in construction. So I always tell guys, you can tell me you can do this, this, and this. Just make sure you're honest, because I'm going to find out within 3 hours on your first day, right? Now, when a guy doesn't have experience, I look for whoever looks the hungriest and is the most, eager to start working. Like Johnny said the story where it's like when he started out and he went to apply for a job, the guy asked him when he can start, and Johnny's like, I got my tools in the trunk, I can start right now. Right. And that's exactly my point. Someone that has the drive, the determination, and that just won't take no for an answer. That's eager to learn. Right. That's all you can really ask for, to be honest. I can teach you plumbing. I can't teach you that work ethic and the drive.
Yeah. How much do you rate like shared values in a person, like culture fit? I know you guys have built like an amazing culture in your company. We're like, I've been to like your parties and your events, and it's just like it's family when you go to an iPlum party. So like, how do you rank that?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, we're fortunate enough. We grew up in Toronto when it was like, in my opinion, one of the best cities in the world, and we grew up with like so many different cultures, right? And we have every culture walk through our door, looking for jobs, and we've probably hired from every single ethnicity, culture, and I'm very honest. I'm very upfront with them that we are like a family, tight knit company. And what I mean by that, we're not all related, but I always present me and Johnny as the most approachable bosses that they'll ever meet, right? Like if you guys ever need anything, if you have a question, if you have an issue, our door is always open. And we always make sure that we beat it in their head that we'll never put ourselves above you, and don't ever put yourself above us. Like you don't have a job without us, and we can't run a company without you. The way I look at business is, look, you provide a service. At the end of the week, I pay you for that service, and then we shake hands and we're back to square one. We're back to even, and we start again next week. And in that process, we learn about each other. We learn to build trust, and we build a relationship on that, right? And in doing so, I just find that the ones that don't fit, it doesn't last long. You can clearly see it within a few weeks, and then they're gone. And then the ones that tend to fit in a lot, with a smoother transition, and end up being the ones that stick around for months or years, whatnot. Yeah. John, anything to add to that?
I just this round of hiring, I noticed a huge influx of union guys. And again, that's where my honest opinion goes back to certainty in the markets. You see a big slowdown in massive projects, mainly in the high rise and housing sector. Everybody in those positions are now looking elsewhere. I know even at the Manny's event there on Sunday. There was crane operators, swampers, that, all have time off now, because there's no real big projects kind of like starting up that are new. And again, the culture that we like to build, that we've talked about a lot, is we look for somebody that's going to fit in, because the reality is, it's no knock on anybody, but some people just want to come in 7 to 3 or 7 to 4, do what they got to do. They don't give a shit who they're working for. They just, they want that paycheck at the end of the week. But then some other guys, they need that self-worth. And I've always been that type of guy. And that's why I never really did well at those massive companies where unfortunately, you're just a number. Because I like to know who I'm working for, and I like to know that when I'm giving that extra effort, that it is going noticed. When I've obviously propelled in my career, that it is going noticed as well. And like Charlie said, we hire all different walks of life, all different ethnicities. And again, unfortunately, we might have to hire 3 guys and only, 1 or 2 stay out of the 3. It's just the name of the game. But the one thing I can tell you is the people that tend to stay, they stay for a long time. And I think that just goes to show that the people who are actually here for a career, and the people who actually care and want to be valued and know that you're not just working for somebody, you're working for somebody who cares for you. I think that's the proper way to run a business. Again, everybody has a different outlook on this, but it's worked well for us. And again, I just noticed that there's a lot more people sitting at home than I can ever remember. And I'm looking for this kind of chapter to turn in Canada so that we can get back to business as per usual.
I find that honesty is always your best friend when trying to hire and build a team and build a crew. You have to be honest in every aspect of how you present yourself, what your company is all about, what you're expecting from them, what kind of jobs you have. Don't sugarcoat anything. If you guys are doing service and you're snaking drains and it's a shitty job, you have to be upfront with them. You have to be upfront of the type of people they're going to be working with, what's expected of them, and you just get that out of the way right at the beginning of the process, right? Don't try to sugarcoat anything, pull the wool over their eyes just to get them on site and hopefully they stick around. Just be honest. They're going to find out just like you're going to find out whether they have the skill they said they have or not, right? Be honest and you'll build a very good team.
Speaking on your point, Johnny, about you mentioned this a couple of times about seeing more union guys come through. So this is from late 2024. Canada faces worsening home ownership crisis with stalled condo sales. So Canada's home ownership crisis likely to worsen over the next few years as proposed project sales languish at historically low levels, stalling the funding needed for construction. Half a dozen economists and realtors told Reuters. Sale of these proposed projects comprising an array of 1 or 2 bedroom condos, major hubs like Toronto is commonly called pre-construction, and a bulk of these properties you brought, So yeah, like this kind of lines up to when like you have been seeing like more union guys come through. So yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah, and the crazy part to all of this is like right now they're in negotiations for more money, and this was a big topic that a lot of the guys on Sunday were talking about, and a lot of them were union, some of them were non-union, because I know we've caught some slack. People think we're always talking shit about the unions, and the reality is that we're not. We're just being open, and we're just trying to correct on what's going on in our field, in our industry. Right? Whether you're union or you're non-union, it doesn't matter. We're all in construction, right? We're all going to feel the effects of what's going on in our economy. So the reality is that you know we have inflation, prices are going up, right? And the cost of living is going up. Now everybody's talking about affordable housing, and how can we bring the cost down? But then we have people obviously again unions, which a lot of these massive projects are union, where they're now fighting for more money an hour. So now you're fighting for more money an hour, which again I'm not saying they're not worth it 100%, right? Like construction is a bitch of a job. I always say it all the time, and we should be paid fairly, which in turn means that the company has to charge more money, right? Because it's not like they're just going to take it out of the profits, right? Again, we've talked about this many times. The larger the project, the less the margins are, right? So if you're going up 10 or 15% on labor rates, then guess what? That transfers back into the end user, right? Which means that that unit now is going to cost 10, 15% more labor an hour to build it, right? Which makes the price go up. Then the cost of building materials going up, right? When you have inflation, it's just a recipe for disaster. So I truly don't know how this is going to correct, because, if now you give more money an hour, how are you going to bring the cost of living down? How are you going to make housing more affordable? Right? It doesn't transfer properly. So you're obviously seeing a lot more people sitting at home, just because there's not enough projects to go around. A lot of these builders and developers and people don't want to take the risk to build. I know one person that we were talking to on Sunday. He was telling me he got screwed out of $60,000 because he bought a pre-construction condo. The condo, they decided not to go through with the build because obviously, they couldn't sell. The prices were too high. The builder was saying that in order for us to build it, even to almost break even, this was the cost. It's more than what they anticipated, when they first bought the condo. Now they're giving refunds. Now the refund's going to come over a certain amount of time. And then, some people are locked in. So even though they raise the price, it's like, yep, you already put a pre-approval down, like, your deposit down. If you don't go through with it, you lose your deposit. So it's a fucking shit show across the board, right? So I don't know how this is going to correct, but getting into a room where like we saw on Sunday, when you have, union, non-union, residential guys, high-rise guys, commercial guys, crane operators, drywallers, roofers, you get a real sense of what's going on. And everybody in that room, unfortunately, was singing the same tune, right? On what they see going on in the industry. But at the same time, like we said at the beginning of this episode, when you get into a room like that with a bunch of entrepreneurs in the same industry, we're all giving words of encouragement to keep our head down, you know what I mean? To keep going, to lean on each other, to give each other advice. Excuse me. And I feel like that's all you can really do right now. One person asked me right now, on Sunday, they were like, tell me, as somebody who has 30 employees, what do you do right now? And I just told him, I said, look, realistically, the only word of advice I have for you today in this time is, right now is the time to be as debt free as possible, right? You got to ride this wave until it's over. You know what I mean? Because again, when I speak to the older dogs, I was speaking to one of my clients, and he told me, he goes, I've been in this industry for, 50 something years. I've been through the 90 recession. I've been through the late 90s recession, the early 2000s recession. And he goes, at times like this, you got to stay debt free, right? You got to spend the least amount that you can, right? You got to try to stay as busy as possible. And if that means that you're literally taking jobs just to keep busy and just to keep dollars turning, keep employees paid, keep the lights on, keep the insurance going, you know what I mean? That's what you have to do in times like this, right? So again, it's just giving people a little bit of a heads up on how to navigate a situation.
Yeah. That's what, coming full circle, man. It's like at times like this, even in good times, like you just got to surround yourself with people that make you better, people that you can learn from, grow with, and just cut out any bullshit that brings you down. And just being in an environment like that, it's just like encouraging to like just continue to do that. That's kind of the best thing you could do, just like keep investing in yourself,
1,000%.
Yep, well said.
1,000%. Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to cover today?
No, I think we touched on a lot of good points.
Yeah.
I guess the last just Jobtable announcement for anyone listening. We have updated our pricing with Jobtable. We have new plan that starts at $59 a month. It includes 3 users and then $10 per month for each additional user. And we basically did this to make pricing just a bit more flexible and fair based on team size, especially as more growing companies are using Jobtable. And it just helps keep things simple, allows us to continue building new features and providing amazing support. And if you're already an existing customer, don't worry, you are locked in to your original pricing, so nothing changed for you. But bottom line, we are still the simplest, most affordable software out there for contractors. So nothing changes on that front as well. So I guess we
100%.
will wrap it there. Boys, pleasure as always.
Always a
And
pleasure, boys.
Just, anybody again listening, please subscribe, like, comment, let us know. And, for a closing statement, again, I think I speak on behalf of all of us here. Any great job, amazing community you brought together. To all the guys that were at the 750th episode, it was great to meet you guys. Look forward to working together, speaking again, getting together again. Just a great group of guys. And again, hats off to Manny.
yeah,
Absolutely.
well
Kudos,
said.
Manny.
All right, boys, have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Take
Ciao,
care.
boys.
Bye.